Hey guys, Submoto here. So these are my two bikes. I've got the Suzuki GS 550 Café racer, and I got my trusty Yamaha SR. That one's a 250. You know, a lot of you guys have been asking me questions of, how did I go about building these bikes? This bike right there, it used to look like this. As you can tell, an orange, horrible looking. I don't even know why they build stuff like that off the out of the factories, but they do. So and this one used to be a cruiser. Obviously I've completely changed the look of them, and there are a couple of things that go into the design of what's what, but that's not what this is going to be about. This is going to be about the questions that you guys been asking about how I specifically went into doing the parts. So this is for you guys that have maybe started a project, bought a bike, or are thinking about buying a bike and made a couple of drawings, and are wondering, about the practicalities. Because one thing is saying, oh yeah, I'm going to buy this bike, and I'm going to put this tank on, I'm going to put the seat on, I'm going to put these pipes on, whatever. And another thing is actually doing it. I'm going to start with the Café racer here, and do it from the front to the end. And guys, this video may be a little longer than the other videos that I usually make. I usually make about 10-minute videos. This one may be just a little bit longer, but that's because there are a lot of details. But don't worry, I'll put in the description. I'm going to put the minutes of what each part of the bike will be. So you just look it up in the description, and you can scroll to that part of the video that interests you or that you're working on. And well, let's get to it. So the first thing on the Café racer that I did was I changed the tires. When you get a bike stock, usually you have thinner tires. And the reason for that is because thinner tires actually have better performance. I know that sounds strange, but they do. And when you get a thicker tire, especially the front tire, your maneuverability is going to suffer. So it's all about finding a tire that looks cool, is still thick, still big, but is still thin enough to give you that certain level of maneuverability. I went for a 110-90, and that's the metric. I want to say that's the metric measurements. I'm going to put here's the imperial measurements on the screen. So, but that's what this tire is. And for me personally, 110 still looks butch, but it doesn't. It doesn't. It's not as bad. Sometimes, I mean, they look awesome when they have the big fat tires, and I wanted that too, but it was just too difficult to maneuver. So I went with this 110. I think that's the balance point. To me personally, 110 front tire is the tipping point where it's still comfortable to ride, but it still looks cool. You start going to 120s, 130s. You start getting to the point where you wish you hadn't, maneuverability wise. But if it's a show bike, then it's just fine. Because for show bikes, it's just about looking good. But this bike, I ride both of these bikes every single day. I ride one bike one day, and then I ride the next bike the next day. And that way I keep them going. And I had a front fender that actually went like way over here. It was chrome, and it went way back here, just like they usually do on cruisers. So the first thing I did was I took the fender off of that bike, the original fender, and which maybe a good way to illustrate this is showing you this one. Just imagine it goes up to here and has like the same rounding off like the edge right there, but it's down here. So what you do is you cut your fender right there and get that piece off. So now you have a piece of metal which is formed, has the same shape as the front part of the fender that you want, but it's just on its own. So what you do is you put that piece of fender on top of where you want the edge to go. So you take that and you put that on top of your fender, and then mark the edge, because you have the edge from the original one, and this one's just cut off. It's just square right there, right? So you put that on top and mark it with a Sharpie, and that way you get the perfect edge. Take that piece of metal, throw it away. Now you have a fender which is cut off, and it has like the marquee, the marker part, which shows you where to cut it. Same thing on the back. Cut it off, put it on top, mark it, and that's it. So now you have a stubby fender. So what you do is you take your, obviously you're going to dismount all of this, and you're going to do this in the shop. Cut it down and grind it like a grinder, and grind it down to that shape. So anyway, so you're asking yourself, well, if I cut the fender like it did, how come the fender looks like it does here? Well, here's the thing. This fender, these are the kind of problems you run into. This fender, first of all, it was too low. Because I had a bigger tire, it started touching the tire, and that was a problem. So I had to cut the brackets. The bracket, it was just like a piece of metal with a hole in it, and that hole was too high. So I had an option. Either I could make a new hole, get a new fender, or I could cut this into like a fork thing. So I just cut a hole in the edge of it and put a washer on each side, and that allowed me to lift it and lower it however I want it to. Problem was that originally I had gaiters like I have on here. I had gaiters on there, but the gaiters, the quality of gaiters is really hard to get good quality gaiters, and they kept just falling apart. I have a video on that too. Now I'm experimenting with these. I got these at Wrench Monkeys. They say they're better, and I'm gonna have to remember to give them silicone spray. Really important to give your silicone spray, or give your gaiters silicone spray. Remember that, guys? But instead of getting new gaiters, I decided to get these. I saw that the Moto Guzzi had them, and I don't know, it looks okay. But I couldn't get them on with the fender on there, because this right here is the bracket. It's a bracket that goes underneath the fender. So there's a fender like on top of here, and then it'll just like hold it. So I took that fender piece off, and then I could get these into place. See how they like touch right there? So that's one of the challenges that I had there. And then I had this like the little piece, and it looked like crap and was all rusty. I said, all right, I'm going to paint it. And they had like these holes at the top. And initially I was thinking maybe I'd like fill out these holes with like body filler or something. But I had some leather left, and I decided to use leather. I don't know how good leather's going to hold up. Obviously you're going to have to condition your leather, but I thought maybe I'd give that a shot. Some of the guys out there, they have like a leather belt, just like a belt right there, instead of a fender. And I don't know what the law is like where you're from, but the law here says you have to have some sort of fender. It doesn't specify what kind of fender, it just says you have to have a fender. Whenever you do paint these things, make sure, and this is for wheels, as you can tell my paint is chipping, because this is paint, and the paint is chipping on this as well. Get them powder coated. Powder coat is the way to go. Do not paint them, because it'll act up on you, and it'll only stay cool looking for about a year or so. So the best way to go for fenders and wheels is to powder coat. Do not paint. That's my own personal experience. Some people tell you paint is better. I don't know. I painted these myself. Maybe that's why. If you get it professionally painted, it might be better. I don't know. I've heard both arguments. I think powder coating like a fender and a couple of wheels is going to run you around, I want to say like $40-50 maybe, if even that. So it's definitely worth it, and it's a lot more durable. For the headlights, a lot of these brackets right here, they're pretty cheap and easy to get. Problem with these is, as you can tell, the screws will rust. So you want to get different screws than the stock screws that come with the holders. I didn't do that, and as you can see, they're rusting here. Or just give it WD-40 all the time, which is what I do. I just been neglecting my bikes. I've been really busy here. Headlight, I kept the stock headlight, but usually you're going to want a smaller headlight. I changed the headlight on this one. As you can tell, I have the same brackets on here. They're really practical. And some people have the brackets pointing upwards. I personally like it when they point downwards, because that makes the top part parallel to the seat and the tank, and you get that straight line. Headlight is a big issue. If you have too big a headlight, your bike will look dorky. You know, blinkers and electronics and everything, whenever you do put blinkers in electronics, a lot of I keep mentioning wrench monkeys. That's because they're just around the corner and have about the best cafe racer builds in the world. Those guys are superstars internationally. They run a lot of their electronics under the tank, so that way they clean up like all of this. Like, they won't have that on their bikes. It just runs under the tank somehow, and they just hide everything incredibly well. In my case, I had to do basically what was on the bike. I didn't really change anything on that. And all of the electronics run into the headlight, as they do over there. If you have LED blinkers, you're going to have to change your relay to like an LED relay. And also, most likely, you will have to use resistors. Get a 1 or 2 resistors depending on the bike and the wiring on it, and also depending on the speedometer. Because if the speedometer will have the lights on there, like the blinker lights. I had to use 2 resistors on this one. I don't know why, but I did. And 2 resistors and a new relay, and that helped out with the blinkers, the flashers, the turn signals. Speedometer. A lot of stock speedometers are incredibly big and bulky and look like crap. So these little things, they cost, I think I want to say like $40. Really cheap, and a lot of bikes have them. And the cool thing about these is that you have your highlights, your neutral, your oil, and your turn signal. Just one light for the turn signal, left and right. And everything in this little thing, and it's elegant. It's nice. Like pretty much all of the guys I know have this speedometer. Here's another thing. Whenever the headlight, obviously it was like way up here because it was like a cruiser, I had to lower that, and then I had a big gap between the speedometer. It has like I had to make this bracket on when you buy these things. It has like a little bracket that runs down to a screw. I couldn't do that on this bike because I wanted to center it in the middle. That one's on the side, this one's in the middle. And in order to do that, I had to make my own bracket. So I just kind of had like a piece of metal and drilled some holes in it. And that kind of worked out. But the thing is, it was way up here. And I had like a giant gap between the headlight and the speedometer. So what I did is I took some tubing and cut the tubing right there, and that way I could lower. It's kind of ugly now. I want to paint it black, but that lowered the speedometer, and I think it works out just fine. Then you got your clip-ons. Your clip-ons, you can get different kinds. This is called the triple tree. The triple tree is the top part that'll hold your fork. And there's 2 of them: top triple tree and the bottom triple tree. And on the triple tree, you will have usually like holders. Some bikes, like my Tracker here, have removable holders, which is really cool because if you want to ever take them off, you could just take that off and you just have a hole there. You can put a screw or whatever. But this one is kind of like molded into one piece, which is a real pain in the butt. So what a lot of people do, they use what they call Clubman bars. Clubman bars are bars that go into the holder, and then they bend downwards. So they'll have like they look like that, and they have the exact same angle. It'll be a Cafe Racer bar, but they will go on here. Now, because I wanted to lower this whole profile, I had decided to go for clip-ons. And you do get a very low riding position with these clip-ons, probably more than you would with a Clubman. But it's definitely worth it for the look, because it'll give you that that look right there. Yeah, and then one other thing I wanted to do, because this was a cruiser, it had like an angle, and you see a lot of Cafe racers that do that. They have like a 2 centimeter or 3 centimeter gap where they push the fork through the triple tree, so that it goes a little higher. That means it lowers the bike just that little bit. You can lower your fork internally, and some people shorten their forks, and they do that. But it's a pretty big operation. As you can tell, I didn't even need that. So that was it. So anyway, moving on. You got your tank. Now, changing your tank on a bike, I changed the tank on this bike. I did not change the tank on that bike. I just painted them both. I painted them by hand with spray. And what you want to know, if you're going to paint a tank, you have to do what you can to keep if it has original paint on it, keep that. So you take some sandpaper and just sand it down, roughen up the surface, and that way you keep the original stock paint on there, because that paint is going to stick on your tank better than anything you can do yourself, for sure. You can get it done professionally and it might stick just as well, but if you're going to paint it yourself, definitely keep the original paint and paint over that. I can't stress that enough times, because I've had so much trouble with paint sticking, but I have had no problem at all with paint sticking to these tanks. It sits really well, and all it is a spray can. I painted this thing white first, and then I masked it off and painted it black in the middle, and then masked it off, painted the red sides, and then I took some clear spray. And I ordered these badges on the internet, and that's how you paint a tank. Basically, I did it in the basement with a military gas mask on. It looked pretty cool. But when you change a tank like this, you're going to run into tons of problems. Or challenges, I'd rather call them. For example, my petcocks right here. These are the things that open and close for the close the gas lines down at the carburetors. And as you can tell, my tank is a lot smaller or more narrow than the original peanut tank that it had. So these petcocks, all petcocks are about this tall. They would run into the engine. So I had to get these like petcocks that are like an L, like an angled petcocks, and I had to screw them all the way up and had to change the threading inside, and it was a nightmare. I went through like 4 of these and just broke them one after the other because I couldn't screw them far enough in there. Long story short, this was my solution. As you can tell, there's a little gap right there, just about a centimeter, or not even a centimeter, and that's just enough that it doesn't touch the engine. But that was a real challenge. There's actually one on the other side as well. So I had to make like a fuel junction in the middle. So they've got the two lines that run in, has a T junction, and that'll run down into the carburetor. The air filter, the original air filter is in there. This is the battery, and I made this, I sewed this leather box right here. Normally you'd want a smaller battery and clear up this whole area right here and put pods on there, but I couldn't do that because you can't have air pods on a CV carburetor. This is a CV carburetor. It's a long story. Look it up if you don't know what it is. Long story short is you cannot use pods on there as easily, or at all actually, as you would on regular carburetors. And even with regular carburetors, it's still better to keep your original air filter. So for that reason, I had to keep the filter, and the filter looks like crap. So I made this leather battery box, and I think actually it looks pretty cool as it is. So, but meaning that I had to keep this plastic thing right here, but it looks cool. I like, that's the whole thing. If you're forced to do something in a certain way, then you improvise, and this was me improvising, making this leather box. And as you can tell, you got the battery in there, and it looks pretty cool. And on the other side, I'm still working on a good solution, but I made like a leather thing, like a cover. I thought about putting it on the outside, but I don't know. I'm still getting there design-wise. So the next thing is the seat. With the seat, you'll run into some challenges. I've decided on the tracker. I decided to go the easy way, and the easy way was using Velcro. I know you're not supposed to use Velcro, but it actually sticks really well. What you want is more of a system like this. This seat, as opposed to that seat, is made at a factory called Motovlog. Motovlog makes these seats, and they've been used on different bikes. It is handmade, and they're really cool. But this seat this seat I made, or had a guy sew for me. It's genuine leather, and everything is made from scratch. Even the seams right here match up with the angle of the seams on the actual bike. So all I had to do was get a piece of aluminum and cut that up the size I wanted it, and give him and bend it the right way and everything. And I gave him the piece of aluminum, and he made the seat for me. So anyway, so this is the seat that I got from Motovlog, and because it's like a factory seat, it had like 2 brackets, as you can tell there. See, those 2 brackets will have to go underneath a piece of metal or whatever. In this case, I have this piece of metal right here, where these brackets would go in under, and you kind of put that in under there, and I just had like 2 bolts right there, and drilled 2 holes in the frame. And whenever you put that on there, now I had to improvise with this, so instead of putting these under the bracket, I actually put them on top of the bracket, but that's a different story. So once you do that, you'll see that the bolts will run through the frame right there. And then all you need to do is find like a nut, and that'll hold that in place. So that's a better way of doing it. Now, as far as the tank, if you like the tank you have on your bike, like I said, this bike it has the stock tank, so I didn't really have to screw around with trying to get that to fit. But if you want to change the tank on your bike, you're going to have to improvise. Because it's not going to fit. It's as easy as that. It's just not going to fit. It won't be made to fit anyway. So in this case, I'm going to take that off right there. I decided to improvise. I'm going to take this thing off kind of so you can... I still have the fuel lines on there, so I can't really take it all off. But as you can tell, right there, I have a... you know those pipes that run down walls with like gas pipes, like in apartments and houses? That's what this is. This would run into a wall, and that would hold a pipe. And I figured since the frame is about the same size as a pipe, I could put that holder on there, and then have the bolt that normally would run into the wall run through that hole in the tank right there. And so that's basically how I got that to sit on there. And over here, I had like an L bracket welded on there, which I just run a bolt through, and that's enough. That'll keep the tank in place. Electronics. As you can tell, this is spaghetti. This is not the way to do it. It looks like crap, but it works. This looks a lot better. There's almost nothing here. It's pretty clean. I don't know if you can tell. There's nothing in there. This is the way. Well, not this, but you know what I mean. You catch my drift. It's what you want to do is you want to clean up your electronics, because 9 times out of 10, the problems that you're going to have with your bike are going to be electrical. They're going to be electrical issues. Your blinkers aren't going to work. Your all sorts of stuff. Anything electrical, like your starter relay, this and that, fuse box. It seems like everyone who builds these things, that's like the first thing you run into. You make your design, you go buy the parts, you put the parts on there, and you're ready to go, and then it won't start, or something breaks on there. So you want to make sure that you get help with your electronics, or just learn how to do the job, or take a course and learn how to do it, because that's the only way to go. This right here is just pure luck. It's a mess. In my case, I decided to have the tag, the license plate, attached to the frame. So I made this tube that attaches directly to the frame. When I first built this thing, I had it on the seat. Don't do that, because that means that every time you take your seat off, you're going to weaken your junction by leaning it up against stuff, or just vibrations, everything. And since you take your seat on and off quite often, what you want to do is you want to just keep that attached to your frame as well as possible. Pipes are tricky. If you want to change your pipes, you want to make sure that your jetting and your carburetors aren't gonna take a beating. Anything that has to do with air or flow, or anything that has to do with the engine, for that matter, is going to affect your carburetor if you have a carbureted engine. Like I said, on this bike I kept the original air filter, and I also decided to keep the original stock pipes. I actually like the way they look, but in most Café racer designs, you want to have a shorter pipe that'll run to the middle of the axle, and maybe even angle it just a little bit up, like 30 degrees or so. And that's what you see a lot of bikes do. In this case, I didn't feel like it worked with the design. But if you do that, like I said, make sure that you look into the carburetor and that you have the right jets on there, because that's going to give you more flow. These pipes right here, they're no maintenance pipes. So basically what they do is they run in and out and they run air in all sorts of different directions and this and that. And it's a little bit more complicated than that pipe I have right here. This pipe is basically just a pipe. When you get these pipes, you have to pack them in like muffler material. It's like a cloth, and when you put that in there, not any cloth, make sure that it's high temperature cloth. When you put that in there, it'll burn off eventually, and when it burns off, you'll have to change it. So these you have to maintain, as where the stock pipes you don't have to maintain. So if you want a low maintenance bike and you think the original pipes look good, just keep them on there. Your rear sets are basically your pedals, which you'd want to move backwards a bit. The reason you want to move your pedals backwards is because when you lower your body position by putting clip-ons or clubman bars on there, if you don't change the position of your pedals, what you're going to do is you're going to bend your back every single time you get on your bike, and that's going to hurt eventually. So in order to get more of a comfortable position, you can put rear sets on there, which will straighten out your back and give you more of an aggressive incline on your riding position. The downside of using clip-ons and rear sets is that your wrists are going to take a beating. But like I mentioned in a different video, that's it's all up to technique and how to use your back muscles. And once you got that down, you can actually get away with a lot, and you won't get fatigued on your wrists. And I could definitely recommend getting rear sets instead of having problems with your back. So if it's a choice between back issues or wrist issues, go for the wrist issues, because that's gonna be a lot less of a hassle. And you can get like rear sets. Problem with rear sets is they run about $400 or $500 pop for a set. And they have like a piece of metal that you'd kind of bolt onto these things, and it's pretty much plug and play. So it's easy, but it's expensive. This I had to make myself. This I had to make like the whole bracket thing, and I'm not even gonna get into how I did that, because that was just a nightmare. It works, and I had to make like these pipes on, or whatever, the threading on each side, make them like extra long, and everything's homemade on this thing, but it works. Okay, so last thing I want to talk about is I've been getting questions about, what about the rear fender? And the frame, because you have a lot of people use loops on their bikes, and whenever you put a loop on there, and they want to put a seat on there, they think, hey, and they see it from the side and say, well, the fender kind of, it's higher than the frame. How the hell am I going to put a seat on there, and how is that going to work? There are many different ways of doing it. This seat right here has like an indentation right here, which will allow for a fender, a rear fender. And I cut this fender pretty short, actually, and I'm kind of relying on the tag to do a lot of the fender work, but it still splashes up, so it's better than nothing. But that's one of the things that make you want to have a license plate in the center of the bike over the tire, as opposed to on the side, because you'll be able to use that as a fender. But the tracker, as you can tell, this seat is completely flat, right? So if you put that flat on, you're going to run into issues. So this is what happened on this bike. I had the original fender, which came out and went way back here, but this fender I cut off right around like a junction point. It was like the inner part, the closest part to the engine, was made of plastic, and that was connected to the metal part. So I took off the metal part, and cut it off at the junction, drilled some holes, and then I got this. This is a front fender from a different bike. I cut off that front fender pretty much just about there. It's just a straight cut, and drilled 2 holes into it. And that way I could connect that fender piece, which is a lot shorter, it only goes up to here, to the original stock fender. So when you use this, if you can, make sure you keep as much of the stock fender as you can, because that's going to connect the actual. It's going to support your fender the best, because when it comes out of the factory, they have like the right brackets and holes and this and that, and they have like different systems to keep these in place, and they're actually pretty flexible. So if you can get away with keeping that, keep that, and just change this part. This part you can regulate as far as you want it to go back, basically by connecting it to that wherever you. So if I want this to be shorter, I just drill 2 holes there, and I can just move the whole thing. Like I mentioned on that bike, originally this fender, the stock fender, stuck out past the frame point, just like on here. But if you change that part, and if you make the junction point just before it hits the frame, you can regulate the height of your rear fender. In this case, that made the rear fender actually almost hit the tire whenever I hit a bump. So I had to get longer rear suspension, so that would kind of lift the bike up, which is okay, because originally this bike was meant to look a bit like a cruiser, and which means it had like a bit of an angle. So by lifting the rear end, making it longer, I got more of a straight flush right there, and that allowed me to have a lot more leeway between the tire and the fender. So the best way to do this, in my opinion, is to connect your rear fender with a bolt that runs through your loop. This loop right here, this bike used to stop here like at the ends. Actually, when I went like all the way back here, so it had like 2 things that stuck out, just like this bike had 2 things that stuck out. Just cut those off. In this case, I just decided to round them off. In this case, I used a loop, and the loop is a functional part of the rear fender construction. Like as I mentioned just earlier, if you want to do this right with a seat, the best way to do this is to have like a bolt stick out the end right there. And if I had a bolt right here, you could imagine that bolt would run through a hole, through the loop, through the fender, and then you'd just be able to connect the whole thing, and everything would just stick right in place and hold everything in place with one bolt. These bolts will vibrate off. I had tons of trouble, so make sure you use Loctite to keep those things in place. So anyway, I hope that helps you guys out, and feel free to ask any questions. If you do have any questions, just ask me in the comment section, and that's just basically it. It's an easy job. It doesn't have to be difficult. If you make a good plan, if you make a drawing before you start out, it's the most important thing to do. Make a drawing, visualize your bike, the bike you want to have, make a list of all the parts that you want and that you need. Find the parts, see, hey, I like that tank, I like those clip-ons on that bike. Make a list of those parts and get those parts. Make sure they fit on your bike, or how you're going to make them fit before you start anything. That way you avoid making my mistake of this bike taking me about 1.5 years to build, and this bike taking me 6 days to build. I actually went for 7 days. And the only reason that I could do this in 6 days, and this took me 1.5 years, is because I bought this bike, and then I just kind of didn't really know what I wanted with it, and I've made some drawings and this and that, and it just took forever. And you ran into one problem would like take you to the next problem, and you'd go back and forth, and it was a nightmare. This bike, I made a plan, made a drawing, made a list, and I had all the parts before I started, and I knew exactly, all right, so that day I'm going to work on this, and that day I'm going to work on that, and boom, 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 and that it took 6 days, and it can be done. It can be done. So that's my advice. So anyway, if you have any questions, just ask me, and as always, remember to subscribe and ride, and I'll catch you all later.